Hello friends, myself Dr. Awadhesh Dubey. Welcome to our new lecture series on central bank. Students, on the previous lectures, we are discussed about the bank and about the commercial banks. All of you know that bank is a institution, bank is a monetary institution who have to responsible for uh, transactions of for the circulation of the money and for the operation of the money related activities. But when we are classifying it by two types. First is the commercial bank, as we are discussed on the previous lecture, where there we are discussed about the function of the central of the commercial bank to deposit the currency, provide the loan, and so other functions. But now today, students, we are discussing only about the central bank. All of you know that central bank playing an important role for the development of the economy. But the origin of the central bank is going to discuss in this lecture. And in this lecture, we also be discuss what the definition of this bank and what the function of this central bank. Can central bank perform same functions what the commercial banks are or not? If not, so what kind of the function is performing by the central banks, or the specific power, what the specific power of the central banks are with the part of this class, student, or with the part of this lecture series, students. I hope you are enjoying this lecture. Those students who are joining this class, they must be have to put their names, semester, place on the comment box by whom I will get the identification of that student. And while the lecture, you have any query, if you have any questions, you must be put on the comment box. I will try to give the answer of your questions. So now let's start the discussions on central bank. As you know, as you see on the screen, this is the meaning of central bank. So now we are first going to discuss about the meaning of the central bank, student. In all the important countries of the world, in current scenario, the central bank has the highest positions, is running the monetary and financial system properly, which controls the entire banking system of the country. Without the help of the central bank, the role of the central bank is very important and significant operations of the tariff policy of the government and in the smooth running of the economy. And without central bank, these works are not to be performed. Central bank are the key institutions who have to play their significant role for successive monetary system, for the operation of the successive monetary system, for the transactions, for the accepting and providing the transaction on the foreign institutions, or other kind of the tariff policy. These all are be performed by these all are be the operated in the behalf of the government by the central bank. So this is the important function of, this is the important identification of the central bank, student. And there have been extensive changes in the activities of the central bank due to which their contribution to the economic development of the country is increasing. Students, the task of this bank is to make possible the work of the economic development in the context of the underdeveloped country, or the developed country or the underdeveloped country. Both are be dependent on the central bank, student. This bank printed all types of the notes in the countries. It acts as a bankers to the government and control the money supply on every nation. At present, the central banks has been considered as a ministry of the economic process in the country. Is have to mainstream is stakeholder of the economic process in the country. Without the central bank, the economic process are not to be operated. This is the importance of the bank. This is the importance of the central bank, students. There is no universally accepted definitions of the central bank, because each and every nations have a specific needs as per economic pattern, and the central banks RB perform that specific needs and other kind of the facilities, other kind of the economic facilities what other central banks can be performed. So they have a long tails of the functions performed by the central bank on different nations, so that this is what it cannot be defined in a single definition. Students, its definition is based on its functions. Therefore, every central bank has a functions as per their nations required. It works to control the economy, money supply, and credit. So, on the behalf of the control of the economy and the money supply and the credit, a unanimous definitions or common definitions or universal definitions are we try to present here in this lecture. On the next slide, we are going to discuss on there. Firstly, we have to focus on the history of the central bank. What the history of the central bank, from where the central bank have to originate it, students. See, students, the word first central bank was established in Sweden in 1656 with the help of the private capital undertake the name of Riksbank. Despite this bank having a monopoly of note issues after 1830s, the major commercial banks of the nation started the work of issuing notes. Although on that time in the Sweden, the Riksbank is the major banks, but the other money, private institutions, other private capital owners have to issuing the currencies separately on the nations. But it have created a lot of chaos in that economy. So the major commerce, so therefore in 1897, sorry, the Riksbank itself was handed over the monopoly of the note issuing by the passing a legislation. So the Sweden economists have to say the origin of the central bank was started from the establishment of the Riksbank. But apart from this, a central bank was established in the Britain in the name of the Bank of England in 1694. This bank was established for the very beginning by the parliamentary legislation, which was entrusted with the right of issuing notes. So the British scholar have to say the origin of the central bank was started from the establishment of the Bank of London, or we can say the Bank of England. So this is the true opinion for the having start of the central bank. Students, after this, central bank was also established in other countries of the world, such as the Bank of France in 1800s, Bank of Netherlands in 1814, Bank of Norway in 1816, Bank of Russia in 1860, and the Riksbank of the Germany in 1875. Students, in fact, the origin of the central bank system started only in 20th century, while the establishment of the central bank is different countries of the world took place only after 19th century. Students, for example, the Federal Reserve System was established in America in 1913, and the Bank of Canada was established in 1934. Central bank was established in most of the country in the world after 1914. So here we have to put the reference of the Reserve Bank of India, which was established in 1935. So approximately we can say, and all of the nations have to start the central bank during the 1990 to 93 till 1940 students. So now let's go to the discussion of definition central bank students. Now see the definition of the central bank students. first is definition is given by the Bank of the International Settlement. The central bank is any nations in the band which has been entrusted with the responsibility of the regulating the amount of the money and credit in the country. If our nations have to entrust the power of regulating the amount of the money and the credit in the country in our institution, that institutions become the central bank. It is the definition of the Bank of the International Settlement. Here, students, we have to mention a definition is given by the Professor Kent. According to Professor Kent, central bank can be defined as the institutions which has responsibility of managing the expansion and the contractions of the quality or quantity of the money in the interest of the general public. It means Professor Kent says the institutions, the organizations, they have the full authority, they have the full power of issuing the currency, issuing the quantity of the currency, issuing the quantity of the currency, and quality of the currency is called the central bank. So more or less by studying these two definitions, we find the student nuts, and that is in which way the central bank regulates the credit and currency in the interest of the country. Students, control and protect the external value in the country and prevent fluctuation in the productions, trade values, and employment. So thus, the central bank is such an institutions that direct the and regulate the monetary credit and the banking systems of the country and contribute to the economic progress of the country. Adequate amount of the money is put in circulations by the central bank. The amount of the credit is regulated and the banking and foreign exchange system is controlled. This was the function of this was the introduction of the central bank. Now we put on the definition as per my opinion what the central bank is in front of your screen. That is, central bank is such an institutions which regulate and direct the monetary, banking, and the credit system of the country in such a way that the economic progress of the country is possible in the proper way. The key player of the banks, key player of the economic activities is by the central bank, and that is the function of the central bank. How can they operate the economic progress? By regulating monetary, banking, or credit system. This is the function of central bank, and whose operate this function is called the central bank. Now the students, needs of the central bank, why we should start, why the world should start the central bank, why our economic system have to adopt the central bank, and this was the now discussion point. Students, after the First World War, due to the rise of the feeling of nationalism and state control, more importance was given to the development of the central bank. In 1920s, the International Finance Conferences was held in Brussels, in which a suggestion was made to establish a central bank in different countries, which would serve a guide for different banks. Within a short span of the 30 years, after the resolutions was passed in the conferences, there was a rapid development of the banking, central banking in the different countries of the world. From 1920 to 1937, during this 17 years, almost every year a central bank was established in one or on the other nation of the world. Establishment of a central bank in each nation was considered necessarily for the several reasons, and that reason was discussed on our next slide, student. And that reason is called as the function of the central bank, because that is the function, that is the operation, that is the rules of the roles was performed by the central bank. Students, now the first functions of the central bank were declared by the Professor de Kock. While the discussion of the Professor de Kock, this is that central bank was established in most of the country in the world after 1940s because to performing the given function, and that function first is the monopoly of the note issuing. Professor de Kock says in each nation the central bank has the sole right to issue notes or currencies, and no other banks has the right to issue the notes, because if the central bank have to issue the currencies, then they have a identical notes. They have no discriminations. They have no any fluctuation. They have no any chaos on the economy. In some countries of the world, the central bank was established for the issuing of the note. This is the basic purpose of the establishment of the central bank, which is increasing importance of notes issuing insurance. And underdeveloped and developing country, there has been a special development of the banking system. Students, bank deposits and become increasing important in development countries. Students, now the features for the note issuing monopoly, or the important features of the note issuing is going to discuss in this way. As you see on the screen, first, the public confidence. If the currencies are being issued by the several banks, then the denominations, the printing, the finishing, the size, the securities, all the notes are be differ. So in this scenario, in the circumstances, they have the discrimination on the notes, and the people who are not to be generally accepted it. And on the previous lecture, we have to define it. Currencies are those money are those mediums which are generally accepted by the all people. So while the differentiation, discrimination of the notes, the public confidence will not to be built, so that it will be provided by, that it will be operated by the central bank, or the giving the right to issuing the notes to the central bank, it becomes possible to increase the public confidence. Second function is second cause of the note issuing monopoly, business requirements. Due to close contact with the business needs of the countries, the business needs can be taken care of by the central bank. Other function is, students, the uniformity is in issuing. By giving the right to issue notes only to the central bank, there is a uniformity and equality in issuing. So this is the another purpose of the issuing the providing the power of the issuing the notes into the central bank, into the hand of the central bank. Next, student, the error control. This market is easily for the government to keep a checks or error in the issuing of the notes if the one banks have to operate it, if the one banks have to issue it. So this is the cause of, this is the important features for the power for being a monopoly for circulation of the currency. Student, now the students, some another characteristics, some another features for the power of monopoly for issuing the currency is convenience in advantage. The central bank is facilitating to reap the benefits of the new issue by taxing the profits. This is another key roles of the central banks for issuing the monopoly of the notes stream. Next is the stability. The internal and the external prices of the money can be stabilized by the central bank by issuing the central currency, by issuing the currency. So this is another features for the monopoly in the currency circulation. Student, next, solving the control problem. Student, giving a monopoly to the central bank solve the problem of the control and the limit the spread of the credit money. This will also be the purpose for providing the monopoly power to controlling, to issuing the currency to the central bank. Next, regulations to the control regulations and control to avoid and the fear of the inflation and the certain percentage of the issuing amount in cap in the gold treasury, so that the amount of the notes can issue can be properly regulated and controlled in the hand of the central banks. So this is the purpose of the providing the monopoly power to the central bank for the issuing of the currency. As the next function is performed by the central bank is the custodian of the cash reserves of scheduled bank. The central bank was the bankers of the bank, so they are the custodian of the cash reserve of the all or scheduled bank or commercial banks. This is another function. Under this function, student, the central bank of the England has a very high reputation in the business and the banking sectors from the earlier time. For this reason, most of the bank of the England open their account in the banks of England and used to borrow suitable amounts from the banks of the England at the time of the objections. Therefore, commercial banks used to voluntarily deposit money in central banks, and these healthy practices was legalized in American in 1913. So from there, the custodian function is being performed by the central bank student. Other countries also started adopting it. The central banks has almost the same type of the relationship with the other banks in the country as an ordinary bank has within its customer. For this reason, it is called the banks of the banks. And a part of the cash fund of the members' banks remain in the form of the deposit, due to which it is called the keeper of the safe fund, and which strengthen the banking and the credit system of the country student. So this is the function of the custodian of the Reserve Bank student. Now the students, the purpose or the characteristics of this custodian of the cash reserves of the scheduled banks. First is the control of the credit policy. The central bank get opportunities to control this credit creations policy of the commercial banks. If the central banks have to write to custodian of the all scheduled banks, they have to easily have to control the credit policy of the all banks by issuing the several policies like the CRR, SLR, repo, reverse repo. That's all, student. Next, fluctuatory in the cash reserve, student. Fluctuations on the cash reserve, student. Due to the mutual transaction of the banks through central banks, the minimum amounts of the money is used so that the economy can be brought in the use of the cash fund, so by whom the economic expenses are being sorted. This is the another function of the central bank as a custodian, student. Next, utilization of the funds. Commercial banks do not have a large amount of the funds tied up so that they can be easily utilized in the time of crisis, and central banks have to provide the facilities to operate the banking activities while the crucial times, and provide the loans to their banks for smooth operations. Next, professional consultancy students. The central banks acting as a friends and guide to the other banks also provide the professional advices to their firms time to time. This is another function of the custodian for their banks students. Next, the clearing works, or we can say the function of the clearing houses. Due to the accounts of almost all the banks in the central bank, clearing of the all transaction of those banks can be also be done easily. If not, then it take a lot of time and a lot of pains. And having a wide area, having all accounts, all banks account in central banks, the function can be done without any hesitation, without any error, without any expenses, without any pains. So this is another function of the central bank as a custodian. Third function is the student lender the last resource. When customers of the commercial bank ask for a large amount of the credit assistance in the obtained from the central bank and thus act as a ultimate lenders. This assist can be done into two ways, which are be here. First, the loan against securities. When the government have to require the loans or the customers have a government securities to provide the loans against that, is the lender of the last resort function of the central bank stream. And the loans in against for a period of 1 year by keeping the central bank government securities as a security in which there is no risk to any kind. These government securities can be sold in the market at any time. So accepting these securities and providing the loans on the behalf of this security is the function of central bank as a custodian. Next, reductions facilities. Student, when the merchant buy the goods or credit, he usually accept the bills for 91 days and gives it to the sellers. The sellers immediately encash these bills from his banks. The commercial banks get the money by rededucting the bills from the central banks when it needed. So this is another function of the central banks as a lenders or as the last resort. In this way, the shortage of the capital is removed by the central bank and credit is encouraged, and there is a growth in business will be shown. In this way, the central bank provides assistance to the commercial banks by providing facilities as the financial lender. So this is the another function of this is another lender function of the central bank stream. Now the next function is the central of credit regulation and the control is considered to be the main function of the central bank. Credit control is used to stabilize exchange rate and to stabilize entry value apart from the international systems of the country. The effect of the value is also on international trade. This work is considered to be an important function of the central bank. Students, fundamental of this success, or we can say the fundamental of this success was defined by two types. For the success of the credit control, the following things are necessary. First, influence of the central bank. Students, the central bank should have sufficient influence of the commercial banks of the countries that the proper control can be improved on their activities. Students. Second is the extensive right. The central bank should have wide power to regulate the credit so that if necessary, the credit can be expanded or controlled. Students, objectives of the credit regulations. The objectives of the credit regulations are first, the entry value established and the exchange rate established. Students, the objectives of the credit regulations should be to bring stabilize in the international value in the countries, and for this coordinated policies should be adopted to stabilize or establish proper harmony. This is the objectives of the credit regulate. Second, students, the proper arrangement of the employment. Students, the purpose of the credit regulation should be to make proper arrangement for employment in the country so that the employment problems can be solved. Student, third one is the economic development. The purpose of the credit regulations should be maximize economic development of the countries because very close and deep relations are maintained in exchange stabilities, price level, full employment, etc. This regard, along with the monetary policy, it will be necessary to get proper support to tariff policy as well. So this is the objectives of the credit regulation stream. Students, another function of the central bank is in the role of government bankers, agents, and advisors. Like Individuals and other business institutions, the government also needed to services of a bank. Every year, the government receive money from the public in the form of the taxes and other income and expend its own administrations and public welfare, and keeping its account in the considered a complex problems. On the contrary, there are many types of the transactions going on from abroad also. Therefore, to perform all these tasks, the services of a bank whose branches are spread in the country and abroad are required. All these services can be easily availed by the central bank, which also provides all types of the financial services for the government. So this is the roles of the central bank as a government bankers or agent. Students, the central bank have to act as a consultant for the central bank. First is the loan arrangement. When required, short-term loans are given to the government by the central bank. Second, students, the government accounts. These banks maintain the government accounts of various departments and their accounts properly. Third is the students depositing money. This bank deposits money according to the government. And fourth is the student the transfer of the currency. This bank facilitated the transfer of the money on the behalf of the government. This is another function of another bankers of the government function performed by the central bank. Next is the currency deals country by the banks. Monetary deals are done by the banks on the behalf of the government in the country and abroad. Next is the student financial consulting. Proper advice is taken by the banks for time to time on financial matter, which helps in making banking and the monetary policy successful. Students, loan arrangement is another function, and that is by making proper arrangement for all the loan issuing by the government, the account, etc., are kept properly. This is the function of the central bank for as a government bankers or the bankers of the government. Student further, the payment of the loans, the loan issuing by the government and the payment of the interest on it are arranged by this bank. This is another function. Students, buying and selling the government goods. This bank deals in the in buying and selling of government goods and foreign security. This is the another function. Student, another one is crisis period. This bank provide assistance in time of the crisis by arranging the exceptional loans for the government. This is another function. And last one is the keeping government account system. The banks receive all the incomes of the government and also pay its expense on the behalf of the government. This is another function of the central bank for the government. Student. Now the student, the custodian of the international currencies. After the World War recessions in 1929, for the purpose of the stabilizing the foreign exchange rate, the exchange equalization funds was established, whose operations was entrusted to the central bank government. All foreign exchange earned in this deposited in these funds and used appropriately when required. Student, does the central bank waste the country's foreign exchange funds as a custodian? Foreign exchange is also required for the expenditure of emphasize abroad, and foreign exchange is required for other government and business functions, which is arranged by the central bank itself. Foreign exchange funds are also kept safe for the purpose of the keeping the rates of the country's currencies stable. Apart from this, it is also mostly for the central bank that country may keep all the foreign exchange earning under its own control, so that it can be used conveniently by the central bank. Due to sufficient amount of the foreign exchange funds, proper credit is maintained in foreign countries. So this is the function is performed by the central bank, student. Now, student, the bank clearance or and transaction function is performed by the central bank. Students, some money is deposited in the central bank by every bank in the country. Therefore, the mutual transaction of the banks are completely with the help of the clearing with the help of the central bank instead of paying in the cash. That is, the depositor bank gives a is secure to all to its credit banks in the names of the central banks, which is deposited in the central bank's accounts. Adjusted treatment in the treatment done by the return the deposit in the debit to the debitors accounts. The checks written on the other banks near each banks keep on coming for deposit, etc. Therefore, the central bank make such an arrangement that the representative clerks of all the banks of one place gather at one place and prepare a collective statement of the credit and the liabilities of the each banks on the on which after obtain the approval of the representatives, that statement is sent to the central banks and central bank have to clear it. Central bank, on the basis of these details, the accounts of the various banks and debits and credits, it will it in this way the transactions work lags are easily be settled with the help of the clearing houses without paying cash, and it have to maintain less expenses. So for the for there are the major advantages of this clearing system. First, the less money required in this arrangement. Less money is required for the transactions of all the banks, and it can be used for other work. Second is the labor saving. A lot of labors are saved in this in all the transactions and transaction of the banks, which the banks itself can be can use in other work, students. Third one is the close relations. When they comes together for clearing a close relations in the establishment among the banks through the bank employee, which helps in the formulations of similar policies, and it helps to helps to make the close relation between these all. Next is the transfer of the funds. The central bank provided facilities for the transfer of the funds to the all its member bank, and these services are provided free of cost. This makes it possible to transfer money conveniently and quickly. So this is another important functions of the banks for as a clearing houses. So at the last, student, after studying these all functions, we can be say some functions are be there which are not to be grant for the central bank, the function which are not to be possible for the central bank, because if the central bank have a key power, if the central bank have the supreme power to operate the all banking institution, but somewhere the central bank have to restricted to perform this that function, and that ones are given on your screen. The first is the central bank cannot perform ordinary commercial banking function in the country like the other commercial bank. Second, students, it will not give loans against immovable properties like other commercial banks have to provide. Third is the it will not return or accept terms bills on behalf of the customers, because it is the function of the commercial bank. And fourth one is the it cannot grant reserve loans to anyone, because it is the function of the commercial bank. Next one is the cannot pay interest on deposit, because it is the profit making work, and central bank cannot be do the profit making work on despite of their commercial their banking function. Next one is the cannot buy shares of any companies, because it is a profit making work and it was not to be allowed for the central bank. And lastly, we can say cannot participate in the trade and the commerce activities, because it is the functions of the commercial bank. So despite of studying the all things, we can be say the central bank or institution which cannot be performed, which cannot be provide the functions like profit making. If the function are required for economic stability, country welfare, it will be performed by the central bank. But in spite of these all functions, the central bank are institutions which are providing the central policy maker for the country, but not to profit making policies. So having studying these all things, we are able, I think you are able to understand what the central bank function is. For this lecture, I think I am able to define all things about the central bank, and I hope you are enjoying this. If you have any query, you must have to put your questions on the comment box, and I will reply your answers. Thank you, students. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this lecture. You must be put on your questions and spread this group of channel by subscribing more channel, more participants. Thank you, students. Thanks a lot.